Indonesia is one of the largest archipelagic countries in the world, with more than 17,000 islands that spread over an area of more than 2 million kilometers squares. Indonesia is host to several unique ecosystems containing a large number of diverse species. At least 10% of the world's flowering species, which counts to over 25,000 species, flourish in Indonesia. There are also 12% of the world's mammals, 16% of reptiles, 17% of birds, 6% of amphibians, and over 45% of fishes, all of which are parts of the nation's lush biodiversity. In order to preserve its biodiversity, which also contributes hugely to the world, Indonesia has taken significant steps in accordance to the national and global target on biodiversity framework. The government has allocated more than 500 units of protected areas spread throughout the country, with the total coverage area of 22 million hectares terrestrial and 20 million marine protected area. Because of its uniqueness and universal values, 6 protected areas are recognized as World Heritage Sites, 16 Biosphere Reserves, 7 Ramsar Sites, and 7 ASEAN Heritage Sites. Many studies and researches has also been conducted to identify plants and animals to assess their potential uses for medicine, food, energy, and biocontrol for a chemical hazard. Some community-driven activities such as ecotourism has also contributed to the effort to preserve Indonesia's biodiversity, which also encouraged cooperation among local stakeholders. The results are heartening. By 2019, Indonesia has been able to increase the population of endemic and priority species. Communities have also enjoyed benefits from this improved environment through ecotourism, environmental services, and other significant conditions, which contribute to their quality of life as a whole. There is little doubt that Indonesia's vast biodiversity plays a hugely significant role in reducing the impacts of climate change. By preserving its biodiversity and its ecosystems, Indonesia can help support the entire planet's sustainability and ensure a better future for all humankind.
Sejarah Fakultas Kehutanan. UGM resmi didirikan pada tanggal 19 Desember 1949 dan merupakan universitas yang bersifat nasional. Selain itu, UGM juga berperan sebagai pengemban Pancasila dan sebagai universitas pembina di Indonesia. Pada saat didirikan, UGM hanya memiliki 6 fakultas dan salah satu di antaranya adalah Fakultas Pertanian. Dalam perkembangan selanjutnya, melalui Surat Keputusan Menteri Perguruan Tinggi dan Ilmu Pengetahuan Nomor 99 Tahun 1963, Fakultas Pertanian dan Kehutanan UGM terpisah menjadi 3 fakultas, yaitu Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Teknologi Pertanian, dan Fakultas Kehutanan. Dengan demikian, Fakultas Kehutanan UGM secara resmi dinyatakan berdiri pada tanggal 17 Agustus 1963. Dekan pertama Fakultas Kehutanan UGM adalah Profesor Insinyur Sudarwono Harjosudiro. Berdasarkan SK Direktur Jenderal Pendidikan Tinggi, SK Dirjen Dikti nomor 163 tahun 2007 tentang pengaturan program studi dan Surat Keputusan Rektor nomor 89 tahun 2010 tanggal 1 Februari 2010 mensahkan perubahan keempat program studi di Fakultas Kehutanan menjadi satu dengan nama Program Studi Kehutanan. Program Studi Kehutanan terdiri dari 4 bagian, yaitu 1. Departemen Manajemen Hutan, 2. Departemen Silvikultur, 3. Departemen Teknologi Hasil Hutan, dan 4. Departemen Konservasi Sumber Daya Hutan. Di Fakultas Kehutanan terdapat Dewan Perwakilan Mahasiswa atau DPM yang berperan sebagai badan legislatif mahasiswa dan lembaga eksekutif mahasiswa atau LEM. Kemudian terdapat 4 himpunan mahasiswa minat. Di antaranya yaitu Keluarga Mahasiswa Manajemen Hutan atau KMMH, Himpunan Mahasiswa Budidaya atau HIMABA, Family of Forest Product Technology atau Foresttech, dan Family of Forest Conservation atau Forestation. Di samping itu, terdapat Badan Semi Otonom atau BSO yang meliputi organisasi pencinta alam atau Mapala Silvagama, Komunitas Seni Kehutanan atau KSK, Keluarga Mahasiswa Islam Kehutanan atau KMIK, dan Forestry Study Club atau FSC. Sedangkan International Forestry Student Association atau IFSA dan Keluarga Mahasiswa Kristen Kehutanan atau BONITA termasuk ke dalam non-BSO.
FFI bekerja di Indonesia sejak tahun 1996, yaitu awalnya bersama dengan LIPI untuk melakukan penelitian-penelitian, terutama penelitian terkait dengan harimau Sumatera. Kemudian berkembang, kemudian kita ada kerjasama dengan Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan, waktu itu Kementerian Kehutanan, terkait dengan pengelolaan spesies-spesies yang dilindungi. Tantangan terbesarnya adalah kata kuncinya sebenarnya kepedulian. Ya, kata kuncinya adalah kepedulian. Kalau semua sudah peduli, maka secara umum sebenarnya pekerjaannya sudah done. Tapi masalahnya itu, bagaimana kita mendorong semua pihak untuk peduli menyelamatkan planet kita ini bersama-sama. Itu tantangan yang paling besar. Kearifan lokal masyarakat juga sangat penting di sana. Jadi di lain pihak kita melihat ada ancaman, tapi di lain pihak juga kita melihat ada kearifan masyarakat untuk menjaga hutannya. Nah, itu yang kita coba untuk dorong untuk dikembangkan di sana. Planet kita ini yang sustaining the planet, itu jangka panjang paling panjang kita. Jadi itu tujuan jangka panjang keberadaan FFI. Bukan hanya di Indonesia, tapi di dunia.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I hope everyone is doing well in LP. My name is Sabila Nabihati. I will be your Master of Ceremony. Welcome to the second session of WECMIC. I'm going to read you the agenda for today. We have 5 expert talks with us. joining us, allow me to introduce them. The first one is Dr. Irene Rajawali from the Technical Specialist Wildlife Trade, Fauna and Flora International. Also, we have Irene Rajawali from Perspectiva. We have Ardi Risman from the Direktorat Pencegahan dan Pengamanan Hutan Ditjen Penegakan Hukum LHK. We have Julianus from Masyarakat Adat Dayak, Simpang, Kalimantan Barat. And last of all, we have Dwi Adiasto Nugroho from Wildlife Conservation Society. Okay, before we start the session, I'm going to read you our expert talk guidelines. So we have each expert talk participant is scheduled for 20 minutes. Expect the keynote speakers who have 30 minutes. For the question and answer sessions will be held at the end of each of the sessions. Now let me pass over the mic to our moderator, the Honorable Mrs. Mary Silaban from Perspectiva. She took her master's degree in the International Political Economy of Resource in 2012 in Colorado School of Mines. She also became the founder of Perspectiva in 2018, a startup in fields of communications strategy, business advocacy, data, and development, which is also one of our sponsors for this amazing event. Mrs. Mary recently published an article in the Extractive Industry and Society Journal with the title, From the Post-Start Era to Intensify Chinese Intervention, Variegated Extractive Regimes in the Philippines and Indonesia. So without further ado, Mrs. Mary, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much for your kind introduction, Sabila. Selamat siang, Bapak Ibu, rekan-rekan semuanya. Good afternoon from Jakarta, ladies and gentlemen. I hope you are all doing fine in this afternoon. I'm Mary Silaban and I'm your moderator this afternoon. I'm very glad to get such an opportunity this afternoon to moderating the discussion for today. So this afternoon we are going to have some like 2 hours discussion on the topic which has been selected by the committee. So we are going to talk about the wildlife crimes. I personally find this topic is very interesting. So I think this topic is both important and interesting. Important because the illegal wildlife is a threat to our ecology. And interesting is also because the magnitude of this business itself is huge, with the market spans across the globe. And also, like I mentioned before, this topic is kind of it's interesting because as we can see from the abstract submission that we received for the session, we only receive a very it's only a very small number of abstract that we received this morning, talking about wildlife crimes. So hopefully, from today on, this discussion will serve as a platform to open more discussion and also to generate more interest on wildlife crimes. If you missed this morning session, you still can access it through our YouTube channel. So please go to our WECMIC YouTube channel. You will find the recording not only from our session this morning, but also from the session from last week opening session and also the first session. So I believe you're going to enjoy the discussion we have this afternoon. This afternoon, I'm accompanied by 4 speakers coming from various backgrounds. We have academicians, we have researchers, we also have policymakers, and we also have representatives from ethnic groups. Our speakers, first is Dr. Irene Rajawali, and then followed by Bapak Irene Rajawali. The third speaker is Bapak Ardi Risman, followed by Bapak Julianus, and the last is Bapak Dwi Adiasto Nugroho. The question and answers, the Q&A session is held at the end of the discussion. So please, Bapak and Ibu, if you have questions, you can write it down in our Q&A box, or you can type it out in our YouTube channel discussion box. I would like to call our first speaker, Dr. Lori Joni. I think we have, so Dr. Lori Joni, I think, do we have your CV shown before?
I think we did.
Yes, okay, okay. Yes, so I think, yeah, again, I would like to read a brief CV of Dr. Lori Joni. She is a technical specialist wildlife trade from Fauna and Flora International, and she's also a PhD from University of Sheffield, United Kingdom. So without further ado, Dr. Lori Joni, please, the screen and the microphone are yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much for the kind words of introduction. I'll just share my screen. I hope you can see it now. Let me know if it's not the case. So I want to start by saying a big thank you to the organizing committee for this kind invitation to present. It's really an honor to speak alongside such esteemed conservationists. So I'll start. So as you know, wildlife crimes such as illegal wildlife trade are first and foremost human issues. They're human problems involving plants and animals. People otherwise hunting or otherwise harvesting protected species. They also smuggle and package, transport plants and wildlife products. People eat plants and animals. As you can see here, decoration, and so on. And so to understand who these people are, what motivates them, and what might encourage them to change their behavior or prevent them from doing so, we need knowledge and methods from social sciences. By social sciences, I mean disciplines such as anthropology, sociology, economics, criminology, and human geography. And social sciences can also help assess not only the problems, but what efforts currently exist to tackle wildlife crimes and what more could be done. I know we've just had a really kind and thorough introduction, but I just want to say a couple more words about who I am so you understand where I speak from and where my thoughts on the topic come from. So my name's Laura. As Mary said, I'm a technical specialist on wildlife trade at Fauna and Flora International. I'm part of a team of 4. We're based in Cambridge in the UK, but we're working with FFI offices around the world to record, share, and apply the best available knowledge and best practice to reduce illegal and unsustainable wildlife trade globally. And in particular, I work really closely with our offices in Southeast Asia, and that includes the FFI Indonesia program, which has been supporting world-class tiger protection work carried out by government and civil society organizations in Sumatra, as you saw in the introduction video. Before joining FFI in February this year, I conducted research on the use of digital monitoring technologies for wildlife and forest conservation in Indonesia, and I was an invited researcher in the Department of Politics and Government at Universitas Gadjah Mada. So over the next 20 minutes, I just want to present some examples of how social science theories and research methods can be used to develop evidence-based responses to stop illegal or unsustainable wildlife trade. And I'm going to give examples from our work at FFI around the world and from my own PhD research. And so first I'll talk about the stage of sourcing and trafficking wildlife and how criminology can help us understand and prevent the harvesting and trafficking of wildlife. Then I want to explain a bit more about how we're learning from social and behavioral theories to communicate with those who buy and use wildlife. And finally, I'm going to say a bit about how social science methods can be used to understand the work, the perception, and the needs of conservation professionals to plan future interventions. First, the sourcing and trafficking of wildlife. And with regards to this, there's one discipline of social science that provides really relevant ideas and insights, and it's criminology. So we can form criminologies to be more proactive in preventing crime and move away from being tough on sanctions to being more smart and targeted. And we can do that by learning from research in criminology and from responses to other crimes, such as drug trafficking or urban theft, so theft in cities, robberies, that kind of thing. One particular branch of criminology that we've been keen to trial and draw on, where we work on illegal hunting and trade issues, is situational crime prevention. SCP for short. So what's situational crime prevention? It's an approach that focuses on situational factors that enable crime to reduce opportunities to commit crime. And that focuses on the context and the environment within which the illegal activity occurs, not the individual and that is involved or their profile. And so that assumes that the illegal activity is a combination of the individual's disposition and the surrounding situation. And so the immediate environment can prompt, pressure, permit, or provoke someone to engage in an illegal activity, for example, illegal hunting, which is what is our focus today. And so the idea is that identifying patterns of illegal activity in space and time can help us make predictions about this activity, how, when, and when it happens. I should stress that situational crime prevention, it needs to be applied to very specific and well-defined illegal activities. It has to be adapted to context. So it has to be adapted to the type of criminal activity, type of offender, the type of species targeted and product traded, but also the end user, the place and the time where this happens. So for example, you can see here on the screen, and I'm going to talk a bit more about this later. It could be targeted on the illegal harvest of steppe tortoise, which is conducted by local harvesters for the use of eggs and shells in traditional medicine in Kyrgyzstan, and this illegal harvest happens in April, May. In France, we can use this approach to develop and this understanding to develop preventive strategies that reduce the opportunity for illegal activity to take place. And so what situational crime prevention theory stresses is that it's really important to use a combination of measures to make it more difficult and less acceptable to engage in illegal activity. And you should be able to see here on the screen that this is done by acting on 5 dimensions of the illegal activity: increasing the effort, reducing increasing the risks to engage, reducing rewards, reducing provocations, and removing excuses. And it's ideal to act on these 5 dimensions at the same time. And you can see in these columns that there's a breadth of options that are available that can be combined to try and prevent activities such as illegal hunting and trade. Of course, situational crime prevention is not always sufficient on its own or appropriate because, for instance, this approach doesn't really look at inequality or deprivation or wealth as causes of crime, and it can lead to crime displacement. You know, if we focus on preventing illegal activities in one place, they might happen in a different place, or in a slightly different way to avoid those measures. But nonetheless, it's a really promising approach. It's been used very effectively by urban police in cities to reduce a range of crimes, as I've mentioned. But for now, it's not used very much in anti-poaching and anti-wildlife trafficking wildlife efforts, and that's something that we're trying to do more of and to see how it can be applied. So the first essential step to crime prevention, as I've mentioned, is really understanding the illegal activity or undesirable activity in detail. And for that, we use crime scripting. And crime scripting is a framework to help analyze and define an illegal activity and understand how it's conducted. It starts with identifying the activity, and then aims to get a picture of the whole chain of events before, during, and after it. Understand how it's prepared, how it's carried out, and then what results from it. It's also focusing on getting an understanding of the time, places, and people involved in each of the steps. And that's an iterative process. You know, you start somewhere in the research and you refine as you go. To give a bit of an example, and that's the kind of sort of information record that you would like to end up with. It looks like there's a slight delay in the slides. But I'm going to give an example, and hopefully this illustrates it well for you. So the example that I want to talk about is work that's been done by the FFI team in Central Asia, led by Oman Sultan Ghaznaev and Bolut Tagiev, my colleagues. And the team used this method of crime scripting to better understand the trade in steppe tortoise that you can see here on the screen, the tortoise. It's a species that's listed as vulnerable on the IUCN Red List and protected under CITES Appendix 2. So it can be traded both legally. For example, Uzbekistan, one of its range countries, has quotas, but also often is traded illegally because it's a protected species in Kyrgyzstan, Kazakhstan, and Tajikistan. And the team worked across these 4 countries. You can see the map here of Central Asia to help contextualize this. And what they did was they started populating this crime script, this table that I showed a minute ago, based on the information they already had. And that helped to form the design of further research that they used to update the crime script. They used questionnaires, skipping ahead. They used questionnaires. They used, in villages and towns close to tortoise habitat, to understand the motivations and how the trade was happening. They interviewed law enforcement officers to understand what get their perspective and expertise on this. And they reviewed past wildlife trade cases and surveyed online market platforms. And the information they gathered through this, they helped them refine their understanding of how and why the trade in steppe tortoise happens. For example, they found that tortoises are not only traded and exported as pets, as they initially thought, but also that their eggs, shells, and meat are broadly used in traditional medicine locally for a really wide range of illnesses. And so what they're going to do is they're going to share these results with law enforcement authorities and discuss with them ways to intervene to disrupt this trade, as I've explained, across these 5 dimensions of increasing the efforts to engage in the trade, increasing the risks, reducing the rewards and excuses. So I hope this clarifies how social science discipline like criminology and social science research methods like questionnaires and interviews can be used to try and identify patterns of wildlife crime and respond to it. Now I want to talk a bit more about the demand side, and in particular how we're using social and behavior change communications to advocate for reduced consumptions of wildlife products. The social and behavioral theory insights are increasingly used in conservation, including at FFI, to act on the demand side of illegal wildlife trade and to communicate with people who are buying and using illegal wildlife products, and so encourage them to change their habits and reduce harms to wildlife. So yeah, the aim of behavior change is to first really understand people's actions in relation to wildlife, and then encourage them to adopt attitudes and practices that contribute to conservation. And it goes beyond just environmental education and awareness, because evidence shows that knowledge and education itself is a really good start, but people generally only change their behavior if a concrete action is suggested to them, if barriers for actions are removed, and if appropriate and trusted messengers, so people that they regard highly and believe, encourage this change. And methods should be tied to people's values and identities and draw on positive messages and emotion. This is what we can learn from the theory. Social science methods, in particular qualitative methods, such as interviews and focus groups, can be used to build the necessary evidence to understand the motivations, what is preventing people from changing, who they might trust most to talk about the topic of interest. And that is because qualitative methods are really well suited to develop a really strong understanding of sort of hard to reach and nuanced ideas like attitudes and perceptions and what decision-making processes and motivations, while quantitative methods such as questionnaires are good to establish the scale and prevalence of these ideas and behaviors. And to illustrate this a bit more, I want to give an example from FFI's work in Nicaragua. And so that's work that's been led by my colleagues Alison Gunn and Carmen Guevara, who they've applied this approach as part of their long-standing program to protect critically endangered hawksbill turtles. And so one of the threats to hawksbill turtles in Nicaragua is the consumption of eggs and shells that are especially collected on the beaches where they nest on the coast. And so the FFI team conducted months of research to better understand the profile and motivations of those who buy hawksbill turtle eggs and shells, and the type of messages that would convince them to reduce doing this practice, but also they conducted research to identify the people and organizations that are best placed to deliver these messages. And so this information will also serve as a baseline that can be compared to surveys that will be done after the project. This is an ongoing project, which is really exciting. And those post-project surveys will help assess the change this has resulted in. So as I said, it started from research based in interviews with consumers, surveys of different types of places where the turtle products are sold. And then the team developed a questionnaire survey to confirm and refine these understanding of the consumers and establish a baseline. And what they found was really interesting. They found that there's at least 3 distinct groups of people who consume turtle products in different ways and for different reasons. There are people who consume the eggs as snacks, often with alcohol, often when watching sports. There was a different group of people who was consuming eggs as part of family meals and during religious festivities. And there was a third group of people, which were international tourists, buying products made from shells as souvenirs. And the team are now using these results to encourage each of these different groups to reduce their consumption of eggs and help protect the turtles. And so they're working with communication specialists and influential personalities to disseminate these ideas. And they do that in a variety of ways that will speak to each of the different groups of consumers that they've identified, to their values and what they believe and what they're concerned about. And this is done through national and social media. You can see here one of the posts for the campaign, as well as events and webinars. And the team first tested the materials they were going to use with focus groups for presenting the different audiences before they disseminated further to see how they reacted and if you know, the effect it had. There's 2 specific and really creative examples that I would like to share. One is, for example, and you can see the picture here, that to capture the interest of those eating eggs as part of family and religious occasions, FFI is working with a celebrity chef in Nicaragua to develop and promote recipes that use alternative ingredients to turtle eggs. So that's about suggesting concrete actions and removing sort of potential obstacle to changing. So yeah, this chef is promoting recipes with fish and quail eggs, you know, that have cultural and social significance, but lessen the pressure on the hawksbill turtles. Another example that I find really creative and interesting is that to reach the group that are eating eggs while watching sports, the FFI team is collaborating with the national radio station and the National Baseball League to incorporate messages discouraging total egg consumption as part of the baseball coverage, which is what people who normally eat the eggs would be tuning into. So these are my examples for social science, both theories and ideas, but also research methods and how they can be used to try and influence the demand side of wildlife trade, illegal wildlife trade in this case. There's a last aspect that I want to touch on really briefly, is that social science approaches can also be really helpful to understand the perception of, for example, government officials and field conservationists who are responding to wildlife trade, and better understand existing work, conservation work, but also what the needs and wishes of these conservationists are. And so that's to continue to improve conservation work in the future. And I just want to briefly touch on one example from my PhD research before I joined FFI, which is focused on look on the use of digital technology in protected area for forest and wildlife conservation, in particular in Sumatra and Indonesia. And so I used over 80 interviews and observation to understand how digital technologies used by conservation professionals, can be government bodies, civil society organizations, how these people and organizations looked at in particular was the spatial monitoring and reporting tool, SMART, that many of you here might be familiar with. It's used in a lot of protected areas in Indonesia and now around the world to record patrol itineraries and observations. And a few key points that came out of my interviews and observations was that officers and conservationists use SMART in ways that help them keep safe and during patrols, to see where they could take breaks safely or camp safely, but also to estimate the sort of time it would take them to conduct certain patrols. And so that can be built on to improve the safety of their work and their work conditions. But the people I interviewed also really emphasized the time and the amount of work and training and expertise it took to get relevant to input data in the software and to get relevant insights from it. And so these considerations of the need for additional human resources and ongoing training can be included in future planning for the use of this technology. So yeah, just a little word to say that social science methods can also help analyze and improve ongoing efforts to respond to wildlife crime. So to summarize the key points, wildlife crimes, in particular illegal wildlife trade, is a human problem, and that's why relevant expertise such as that's based in social science knowledge, so disciplines that look at what people do and why, and that use social science methods to gather evidence is really important to understand and address these issues. And that can be from different angles, as I've shown, looking at the harvest and trafficking of wildlife, looking at the demand, but also the existing responses. So I hope that the elements that I've presented resonate with some of your work, maybe suggest new ideas to explore further. If you want to learn more and you're interested in applying situational crime prevention, we're going to be releasing a toolkit explaining it in detail to conservationists such as yourselves, as well as training materials in less than a month on the FFI website. It's going to be available online there, as well as on the Arizona State University Center for Problem-Oriented Policing. For more on behavior change, there's a lot of really exciting practical guides with detailed examples that have been put together by organizations such as Trafficking USA IDEA, which you can find on changewildlifeconsumers.org. And for more on my own research, you can find it on the website of the research group I belong to at the University of Sheffield on biopsych.group.shef.ac.uk. So that's it from me. I'm really looking forward to the discussion, hearing your questions. If you have any later after the panel, please don't hesitate to get in touch over email. Thanks a lot for your attention. Terima kasih banyak atas perhatian Anda, Bapak dan Ibu.
Thank you very much, Lori, for your presentation. Terima kasih. Actually, I have one question for you, but I think I'm going to keep it for later, as this is the rule of the session this afternoon. I would like to, I note something from your Lori's presentation that I think your presentation emphasized the needs of cooperation across different studies, not only not only cooperation with biologists or with forest conservation, but it's I think at this time of social media, it's very important to really look at the social science and the use of social media. Well, thank you again, Lori, for your presentation. Bapak Ibu, ladies and gentlemen, if you have questions regarding Lori's presentation, please write down your questions at the chat box or at the YouTube. We'll pick the questions for the Q&A sessions. So next presenters we have here is Bapak Irene Rajawali. Irene Rajawali, basically he's a data scientist, but he does a lot of things, in natural sciences. So he's actually my colleague as well at Perspectiva. We actually went to the same university, if that's important for you all to know. So he just, I think he just recently just received his PhD in complexity science from University of Lisbon, Portugal. I think this is his second PhD actually. So Pak Irene Rajawali, without further ado, please, we all look forward to hearing your presentation.
Thank you, Mary. Can you hear my voice?
Loud and clear.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Ibu dan Bapak. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera, Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, dan salam kebajikan. I'll just continue, and thanks for the first presenter, Dr. Joanny. I'm complimenting her. I'm just following her. I'm so surprised that our presentations will be connected actually. So I will share my screens. So yes, this is my screen. So I'm gonna try to elaborate with you all. We learn together about how, in particular, data and network science probably can help us to tackle the wildlife crimes. As the previous presenter said, like the social sciences is I think is a key. I totally agree, and I'm gonna go a little. I'm gonna add some of the knowledge or some of the experiences that probably useful for us. So the network science. So my talk will be divided into 4 sections like this. I'll be very brief and very fast, so we have more time for discussions. Just to introduce, everybody talks about networks now, but what is actually networks, right? I mean, like me and Mary are colleagues, and we are networked. So there's me and Mary. These little circles, one is me and one is Mary. We are connected as colleague, but we are also connected as friends, etc., etc. But why it is important? Why, in my opinion, why it is important? We should ask that one, and how on earth this understanding this network is important. So I try to make or to design something like this. So network probably can help us in tackling the wildlife crime or wildlife trade or wildlife illegal trade by understanding its centrality. So who's the central actors in these networks? Networks of what? Networks of the illegal trade. So who's the central? That's the main questions. But the answers might be a lot. Like in which way you want to measure centrality. We have the degree of centrality, we have the betweenness centrality, we have the eigenfactor centrality, we have the closeness centrality, etc. I will explain it later, but I want to bring you through this slide. I want to bring you that the network is not about dots and links, but it's also about who's the central. And understanding the central, in my opinion, I need to discuss with you all is important to pinpoint or to help us to craft the best methods on ending the illegal wildlife trade. What kind of centrality or how centrality is important? In these pictures, in this slide, the X is more central than the Y. The X is more central than the Y. In terms of degree of centrality, it's the X. Why? Because the Y has less direct links compared to the X. The X has more direct links. So the X is more central than Y in terms of degree of centrality. Picture number 1 and picture number 2. Picture number 3, you can see that in picture number 3, you can see that the betweenness centrality, the X is more central than Y. Why is that? It's so difficult, Y and Y. Anyway, why is that? Because the X is the bridge of all members of the networks. Without the X, the left and the right part of the networks are not connected. Closeness centrality, the picture number 4 from left. X is more central than Y. Why is that? Because the X is closer, or X has closer directions compared to the Y, to the other networks. So understanding this one is important, again, to help us to determine which strategy is best to crack the networks of wildlife trade. I'll show you in some examples later. So second part is about how I personally or we might learn from the network science offlinely, or let's say apply the network science into the real life, following also the first speaker. Thank you very much. So how we might use it offlinely. This is the fish that I had to deal with during my PhD back then. I have to deal with reef fish. So these are from the genus of Ephinephelus and Plectrophomus and etc. So reef fish, basically, they are the fish, solitary fish that live in the reef. So the habitat is reef. They're being traded. Mostly they are caught in Southeast Asia, but then they are sent to China and Hong Kong and China, and they are eaten there alive. Well, not alive. They are sent alive, and then they are being put in the cage in the Hong Kong and China like this. And then when you visit the market in Hong Kong and China, and then you can pick one of them, and I want that guy, and then they will cook for you, right? And what's wrong about this one? What's wrong with this one? The way people catch this fish is considered as illegal. Why? Because they catch the fish using the left pictures. You can see cyanide. So they stun the fish. So they try to make the fish dizzy or fly if you want. So and then they can catch the fish easily. And why is that? Because every fisherman there is indebted to their patron. So fishermen are indebted to their patrons. For example, I give you an example. If Mary is my patron, then I borrow some money to Mary. Mary, can I borrow you, patron? Can I borrow you money? Because I need to get some fish outside there, and I need to leave my family with some amounts of money. So I'm indebted to my patron. And to be able to pay the debt, then I have to catch as much fish as possible. And as this fish is a solitary fish, then if you just use line, like fishing, line fishing, in 1 week, probably, if you're lucky, then probably you have one or even only two. But they are indebted a lot. So I have to, as a fisherman, I have to catch the fish as many as possible. How do I do it? I use cyanide. So I spread the cyanide, I squirt the cyanide when I dive. I squirt the cyanide into this reef ecosystem, and the fish get stunned. And then I can easily get them, and I get a lot. And then I bring them to the ponds belonging to my patron, the pictures on the right, for example, at Mary's. So you can still see the fish are still stunned, but they're not dead, because if they're dead, then the fish is priceless. So they have to be alive. And they have to be sent alive like this in the boxes, like in the right-hand side of the picture, or the picture in the right-hand side. But to be able to send it alive there, you have to stun the fish, or you have to make the fish as if the fish is dead, so it's not moving when it's being flown to China or Hong Kong. So how to make it like this? They injected some chemical stuffs. I couldn't really find what is that, but somehow I saw that, like, oh, the fish is like dead, right? So it flew there. And by the way, all the species of the fish is in the red list, considered as endangered. Well, not all, I'm sorry. Most of them, but it's endangered. And it's getting, the abundance of this fish is getting low and low, not only in Indonesia, but in the whole, I would say, in the large area of the reef ecosystem in Southeast Asia. So because of these practices, it's illegal actually. But this is a very lucrative business, super lucrative business. But how on earth it's going on like this while it's illegal to use a cyanide, and it's illegal even to catch some of the fish, some of the species of the fish, including the Napoleon wrasse, Selinus undulatus, because there is what's so-called as prosecution's insurance network. What is this? So if I get caught by the police or by authorities, let's say, my patron will pay for me, will bail out for me. So my findings that day, it was from 10 years ago. So my finding was like, they pay the water police like around $5 to $10 per visit of the water police. And they pay around $100 to $200 per month to some commanders. And they pay to some, persons from Navy and Navy commanders, etc. Why do they do this? Because they want to make sure, they want to ensure that their business is good, is still going to go on. They can still send the fish to Hong Kong and China. So this is first insights, I would say, first findings that, so the networks is working because there is a cluster, which I called as prosecution's insurance network. And for example, the pictures on the left up there, it's a Napoleon wrasse, Selinus undulatus. It's totally forbidden to catch the fish, and totally forbidden. It's illegal, but it's still going on. And one example is one fisherman was caught by authorities, let's say, and then he was released because the patron paid the authorities 35 million rupiah, or around $3,500 back that day. So that kind of, it's how the business or the network works actually. So how network science can help us to understand the whole things. If you look at this picture here, live free food fish profit and debt network, I'm sorry, misspell network, you have at least three clusters. The fishing networks mean the fishermen that are living in small islands, that are very dependent to their bosses or patrons. You have the trading networks, the one who carries out the fish, prepare the fish, carry out the fish outside of the big island. In my case, it's Sulawesi, and bringing until Hong Kong. But then you have the orange one, the prosecution's insurance network, the one that I told you before, the police, etc., etc. And the whole thing works in this way based on profits and debt. Fish, the ones that are flowing here is the fish and the money. That's it, the debt. So how can we learn from these networks? We can, if we want to, let's say, destroy or disturb these networks, these illegal trading networks of fish, then we might want to know who's the central actors here. And then we might want to ask ourselves, what kind of centrality do you wanna use? I'll give you an example. Number 7 is the big boss residing in Makassar, this Mr. Number 7 one. So if we can quote unquote touch him or quote unquote disturb him, then we might break down the whole networks, because he's the one who has the highest between us centrality. He's the bridge of all these networks, for example. But then, of course, you come up with another questions like how to disturb him, etc., etc. But we can discuss it later. But this is, I want to show you how networks can help us to understand, with our limitations of resources, which one do you want to touch? Which one do you want to, to deal with first? I hope you get my point, but this is how networks might help us, again, to break down these structures. And the previous speaker also gave us some really good example on how she and her team use online social media as well, trying to understand, this illegal wildlife trade and to campaign anti-illegal wildlife trade. So how also, I want to add something, or I want to, I would say, complement the talk with how we can also use the network science online in terms of tackling the illegal wildlife trade. So I'll give you some example. It's done yesterday and last week. I code and I create like kind of, well, code or algorithm, if you want, to catch all talks and all tweets in Twitter, of course, in all tweets with the keywords of wildlife conservations, because I want to know which account or who's talking about, who's the central ones in talking about wildlife conservations. So if we want to fight the wildlife illegal trade, then we know which account or who's to touch, and to who's to be asked to be friends, to be our friends, to amplify it in the Twitter, right? So this is the pictures. Last week, 2 November 2001, we have actually Leonardo DiCaprio, very central one. I don't know why, but I think it has something to do with the COP26 in Glasgow, or it has something to do with G20 probably, I don't know. But last week, Leonardo DiCaprio and Move the World, the account Move the World, top left, and G20.org and Sheldrick Trust, I don't know who is this, they are the actors or the accounts, Twitter accounts that has a very, very, very high degree of centrality. By the way, the bigger the circle is, the more central the actor or the account is. So we have 4 big circles into in the 2nd of November 2021. And just last night, I tried to search with the same word, like wildlife conservations. It changed already. So there is an account called Sandy Gozo. I don't know who is he or her. Bell, SWRK, Royal Family, etc. in Interior. So it changed. So in 1 week, you have this dynamics of networks in Twitter talking about wildlife conservation. So we all might want to learn from this that, so last week we should have touched or asked Leonardo DiCaprio actually to talk about, against wildlife conservation, for example. So this is the degree of centrality. But I also want to know who are the bridge? Who are the bridge account in Twitter talking about or tweeting about wildlife conservation? Last week, it's the account of Move the World. So if we managed actually last week to, try to mention this account in Twitter, I'm pretty sure the campaign will be very viral, if you want. It's gonna be very widespread. And last night or yesterday, there are several accounts who are the bridge, who becomes the bridge of all the networks talking about wildlife conservation. For me, it's very interesting to see this royal family, the one in orange. I haven't gotten any time to check who is this account, but I think we might want to check this account. So maybe we can, do something with this knowledge or these insights that we got from Twitter. And the eigenfactor centrality. There's one centrality. This is interesting. Somebody is central because they are connected to a very central person. That's why we call it eigen, or that's how eigenfactor centrality works. So we know from this eigenfactor centrality that the Move the World one and G20 ORG Leonardo DiCaprio in the 2nd of November are the accounts who are very, very central because they are connected to a very, very, very central other accounts. And just yesterday, it's Sandy Gozo, royal family, and etc. You can see in the pictures that are very central because they are connected to the central's accounts. So if we want to spread and to influence the whole Twitter, if you want, or people in Twitter on fighting wildlife illegal trade, then we might want to mention their accounts when we tweet. So this is, I hope you get it. I don't have too much time, but definitely Mary and I would be more than happy to elaborate this more, but we can learn a lot actually from using network analysis, analysis, network science in wildlife conservation. So this is a wrap up. You might want to use different measures of centrality. So if you want to know who likely is holding most informations, then you might want to search for the account with a high degree of centrality. If you want to influence the flow, flows of money, flows of information, or flows of fish, or flows of, I was in West Kalimantan after Makassar, so I dealt also with the illegal trade of hornbills. So if you want to influence the flows of the hornbills, so you might want to measure your networks between the centrality. If you want to influence the entire networks in a very quick time or very quickly, then you might want to know who's the one who has closeness centrality. And if you want to know like the good all-round actors or account in your network to spread, our campaigns, for example, then you might want to use eigenfactor centrality. And even we can use it also to capture the words that they use. In this case, I use Twitter. So what kind of words? It's called semantics, the words, the networks of words, semantics. Oh, so what kind of ideas actually are there when we search for for wildlife conservation in Twitter on the 2nd of November and on the 8th of November? It's actually the words that appear that we can get by the machines. So we have some groups. Color signifies groups or clusters of discussions. So we have the Spanish, I think, the Spanish discussions, realeza, trabajo, etc., etc. We have this, the yellow one, of course. We have the red one, species provides new hope, recovery. We have the green one, top left, Ohio symbol, refugee populations, eagles, national support. So probably there's something going on in Ohio at the moment with the eagles, etc., etc. So you might want also to use networks for this, for, I would say, recognizing patterns or having informations about what ideas are there in Twitters or in different kind of medias. This is the semantic networks. You can even measure the centrality of the words. Of course, wildlife conservation is going to be very central because that's the two words that I use as a search for the search words. But then you can learn also there are different words that are also central. Duck, and then what else? There are scientists, traditions, family, continue, book. They are also central. So probably there are some, accounts there discussing about traditions, ducks, family, continue, scientists, etc. So we might want to enter that conversations to influence or to give our opinions probably. And we can even also measure the words, how many words there, or wildlife, trade, global, illegal. If we put unigram, it's called unigram, one word, then we have the most is wildlife and second is trade. And after global, illegal, animals, and wildlife trade, pandemic, leaders move the world, etc. If we want to have the bigram or trigram, so 2 words and 3 words, so you have in 2 words, you have wildlife trade, global wildlife, illegal wildlife, etc. People, planet, animals, people. The trigram one, in the trigram one, you have global wildlife trade, illegal wildlife trade, animals, people, planet, etc., etc. So with this one, we might again learn, that's what people talk about wildlife conservations at the moment in Twitter. And of course, you can use it also in other medias. So we might think about strategizing how to influence or how to enter the networks. So also you can measure the different types of words. Like you want to know how many nouns, how many verb, how many adjective they are used. This is the verb mostly used in the Twitter in the 2nd and 8th of November 2021. If we search for the word, for the sentence or for the words wildlife conservations, we have end, stop, ignore, protect, continue, help, stop, continuing. The noun one are wildlife trade, animals, planet, people, hence. I don't know if it's useful for you or not, but I think it might be useful. Adjective, of course, and with an algorithm, a special algorithm called RAKE, R-A-K-E, a rapid algorithm for knowledge extract, for keywords extractions. Actually, the Twitter in the 2nd November, if we get all the Twitter in the 2nd of November, which talk about wildlife conservations, then the keywords are movetheworld.org, global ban, wildlife market, illegal trade, pandemic preventions, wildlife trade, legal trade, etc. So I hope it might also help you. So I come to an end. At the end, in my opinion, we all need to try. We have data, but I think we need together, we need to try to turn the data into informations into knowledge into insight, and of course, wisdom and actions. So this is the approach that I like, or we like, both with Mary as well. So I think this is the approach that might be useful for you all. Data is great. Having data is great, but then you definitely need to transform it into informations, knowledge, insights, wisdom for actions. And how to do it? Me and my colleagues, Mary, we try to develop or to work in this way. So you have the data acquisitions part, but then after you get the data, you need to analyze the data. Then you have the data analysis. You can use cartography, spatial statistics. You can use AI if you want, machine learning if you want. But then you'd have to articulate the data for the decision makers. Decision makers do not have a lot of time. They just have 5 minutes, but then within 5 minutes, you need to convince them to act. Then you need to articulate your data. So this is the approach that we mostly use actually. But the question is, or my questions to you all is, can actually machine fall in love? And how how it has something to do with the wildlife conservations. So this is just to I would like to ask you also to think that actually behind all this network analysis, behind all these tools, behind all this technology are human. So behind any digital is analog. At the end, it's us. It's how we formalize our knowledge, our experience that also very much matter. Technology can help, yes. Algorithm can help, yes, but they're just tools. It depends on us how we want to formalize that one, our knowledge and our. So this is, for example, one movie in Netflix. I'm sorry I say on Netflix, but anyway, it's called Coded Bias. How biases are being coded actually into algorithm. So algorithm might also be super biased. So again, it depends on us. And I would like to close with these quotes. Simplicity is the ultimate sophistication. Thank you, Mary. I hope it's all useful.
Well, thank you, Raja, for your presentations. As always, it's always a thought-provoking presentation that my colleague here just made to us. So what I can, some notes that I take from your presentation is, I think this is very useful. I mean, by this network, by learning this network, we can use this network to help us effectively tackling the illegal wildlife trade, because you just need to kill one person instead of killing like the whole community. And the other important point that I think is even more important is we just find like, another reason to love Leonardo DiCaprio. So Bapak Ibu, Irene Rajawali, thank you very much. Again, this is like, I think this network analytics has been widely used in other sectors. Maybe this is the time for us, for people at the wildlife conservation to start using this network analytics, for various purposes. So thank you again, Irene Rajawali. Next, I would like to call our third speaker, Bapak Ardi Risman from the Director General of Law Enforcement, the Ministry of Environment and Forestry. Pak Ardi Risman is replacing the original speaker, Pak Sustiono Iryono, who happened to have a last-minute assignment from the ministry, so he cannot present with us today, but we are very fortunate to have Pak Ardi Risman with us. Pak Ardi, please, the screen and the microphones are yours.
Okay. Thank you, Bu Mary, ladies and gentlemen, and other panelists. The presentation by two panelists before is very interesting. First, from Dr. Laura, how to reduce demand of wildlife with social science approach. And then Mr. Raja, Pak Raja, how the data and network will help to determine the strategies and the best way how to tackling illegal wildlife trade. And now I would like to present that I have prepared combating wildlife crime in Indonesia, the efforts. Sorry, I can share screen. Share screen. Okay, can you see my share screen?
Yes.
Bu Mary? Okay.
Yes.
Okay, thank you for this opportunity. And as Bu Mary said, that Pak Sustio cannot attend to this meeting because he have other business, and I request him to present about combating wildlife crime in Indonesia. I work for Ministry of Environment and Forestry as a Deputy Director under the Pak Sustio. And also I'm a national focal point for CITES Enforcement Authority. In this opportunity, I will share the first screen about the wildlife crime. As we know that wildlife crime is a threat to the decline of Indonesia biodiversity. And then wildlife crime also is a transnational and organized crime and high profit, low risk for involved actors, hunters, and collectors. And then wildlife crime also involve poaching or illegal use of protected wildlife with high economic value, and as a trigger for hobby, for medicine, and social status. And the modus in wildlife crime always grow and evolve, use information technology to do business with online trading, as Ms. Laura present before and Pak Raja present also before. As we know that the modus of wildlife crime today are poaching without permit, and then smuggling at the seaport, airport, and other gates, and then bribery to officer, false document or misuse of document, and then also illegal trading with involve the third party to pay with a collective bank account. And then now online trading with in social media and e-commerce, and also private blog, also one of the popular modus in wildlife crime today. And then online transportation application in Indonesia, we know that Gojek, Grab, etc. Next. This is the strategy of wildlife crime in generally like this, the diagram from the upstream and on the habitat and wildlife conservation, wildlife watching, and wildlife collection. In downstream, we have found that the wildlife trade and its path and wildlife utilization. And then from the left and the right side, we need the synergy of management authority and law enforcement authority. And this is the description of wildlife condition in Indonesia from upstream or habitat, supply, trade, and demand, and effort in this circular of wildlife crime. We need law enforcement cooperation network who involve the police, judiciary, ministry, government, customs, quarantine, and civil society or NGO need to be strengthened and improved. And this is National Wildlife Law Enforcement Network, involve the Ministry of Environment, Forestry, Police, Fisheries Quarantine, Agriculture Quarantine, Indonesia Customs, and Attorney General. This is the cooperation in wildlife law enforcement, international and international level. International, as I said before, we involve the police, judiciary, general attorney, KPK, Transaction Report and Analysis Center atau PPATK, customs, quarantine, national e-commerce, national cargo, and NGO and NGO. In the international, the cooperation with the ICCWC, International Consortium Combating Wildlife Crime, and Interpol, UNODC, CITES, ASEAN Working Group on CITES and Wildlife Enforcement, and then cooperation with the project from JEF, and also international commitment. This is national strategies for combating wildlife crime today. We have a national strategic plan on combating illegal wildlife trade, and ongoing process. We also will amend the amendment of National Act, Undang-Undang Nomor 5, Act Nomor 5, 1919, regarding conservation, biodiversity, and its ecosystem, and then strengthening cooperation in wildlife law enforcement, strengthening national wildlife enforcement network at national and regional level, development of law enforcement center of intelligence, promoting science and technology approach, increasing capacity of frontline officer, forest police, marine inspector, investigator, prosecutor, and judge, and public and community engagement. Involve the NGOs, universities, research agencies, and research community, and etc. This is the national strategy and action plan in Indonesia. This national strategic are long-term guidelines and strategic guidelines to combating illegal wildlife trade cross-sector coordination. Using system dynamic modeling to describing models and system analysis that are dynamic and complex. The system dynamic model identified for interrelated issue domains in the dynamics of the combating illegal wildlife trade system. The first is organizational resilience, 33%, top of priority of national strategy, and then rural resilience, judicial system, and illegal wildlife trade supply chain. The new initiative in the combating wildlife crime are this in the list. We have the list, the new initiative: cyber patrol for illegal wildlife trafficking, and then ranger patrol for animal trap and poaching in some protected areas in Gunung Resort National Park, Buganilani National Park, Bukit Tinggi National Park, and some conservation area in Aceh and Riau Province. Establish a check post in Bakauheni Port, Lampung Province, for controlling wildlife traffic from Sumatra Island to Java Island. And study of economic valuation for 25 protected species, flag species, and demonstrated illegally for calculation economic loss in wildlife crime. And then development animal handling guide book and tutorial video tutorial, and development of Indonesian protected species database and mobile application, and then development repatriation of wildlife guideline, bilateral cooperation and repatriation of wildlife from Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand, enhancing civilian investigator authority in money laundering, mutual legal assistance on wildlife crime case with Indonesia and Netherlands, campaign on social media. The next slide. This is the book of economic value assessment of wildlife species to support legal process. The formulate the most appropriate methodology economic value of 25 protected and priority wildlife species. And the economic value of wildlife used as a basis for determining the amount of lawsuit or state loss is the market price that has been weighed by considering the value of the maintenance cost. Using three evaluation methodologies. The first is the market price approach, and the second is CVM or contingent valuation method to produce the willingness to pay value, and the last is the maintenance or protection cost approach. The next slide are implementation highlight in wildlife law enforcement efforts. I will explain 7 efforts today in the combating illegal wildlife crime. The first is cyber patrol for illegal wildlife trafficking, and then operation on wildlife crime, and wildlife repatriation, mutual legal assistance, checkpoint in national borders or gates, and trap removal operation, capacity building related to wildlife crime. We have in our organization, we have a cyber patrol unit to illegal wildlife trade. The officer will patrol in front of the laptop to check the traffic of illegal wildlife trade in the social media like Facebook or Instagram, and then report the data tabular database and then data extract network, and then they can target setting and then profiling the account. After the profiling account, we will determine which account will be blocked, which account will be continue with intelligent operation, and which account will continue to operation or law enforcement. This is the result of infographic, the result of wildlife trade cyber patrol during 2021. 2021. We have found more than 2,600 account upload, and 1,600 account, and account delete 190 account delete, and 222 follow up by unit Gakumin province, and the last we have 13 operation of wildlife after we have found the data from cyber patrol. This is the number of result of protecting wildlife online threat monitoring into 2021. Maybe the moderator will distribute this presentation to participants to see the data. And this is the most frequently wildlife species we found that wildlife cybercrime. The reptile about 13, and aves about 52 species, and the mammal about 34 species. This is the example screenshot, the result of the cyber patrol team. And number 2, operation in illegal wildlife trade. We have provided some operation to illegal wildlife trade. In September 2020, the Directorate General of Enforcement uncovered illegal wildlife trade in Sukoharjo Regency. Ranger and civil investigators seized rhino horn and cigarette pipe from Ivory. And then in operation between Directorate General of Enforcement and Regional Police in Banda Aceh in November 2020, says to suspect evidence as hornbill and pangolin scales. In February 2021, and National Police arrested one person as a suspect with evidence 1 baby bear and 28 kilograms of pangolin scales in Padang. And then several operations. This is the wildlife law enforcement achievement during 2015 and 2021. We have we have do the 405 wildlife operation, and from 405 operation we continue to the court about 329, and the evidence are 200,000, about 200,000 animals and 15,000 of body parts. And number 3 are repatriation of wildlife. Ministry of Environment and Forestry accept to repatriation of wildlife from Philippines, Malaysia, and Thailand. from Philippines, from the Philippines, 91 wild animals, reptile consists of reptile, mammals, and aves, have been repatriated from Davao, Philippines to Bitung, North Sulawesi, Indonesia on July 2020. And from Malaysia and Thailand, 9 orangutan from Malaysia and 2 orangutan from Thailand have been repatriated to Indonesia on December 2020. Ministry of Environment and Forestry also have done the mutual legal assistance. Indonesia National Police and Directorate General of Law Enforcement were involved in the successful investigation of a wildlife crime case that led to conviction in the dismantling of large-scale network. The network was trafficking endangered species listed under the CITES, such as 53 schools and the babirusa, more than 100 shellfish rostrums, and hook amounts of coral and snake skin, and whalebone order from Bali to the Netherlands. The recovered species were returned to the Indonesian authorities and used in the crime case as evidence. Court proceedings have also been initiated against the Dutch suspect in the Netherlands. And number 5, checkpoint at national border or gates. We have the pilot project in Bakauheni and Panjang Port in Province Lampung because the high circulation traffic of forest product from Sumatra to Java and vice versa through crossing port in Lampung. The checkpoint have a job to monitoring, strengthening through intelligence and prosecution operation. And during 2021, filing to smuggle 1,090 wild animals of various bird species alive, and 145 of them are protected species, which were transported by car. And also filing to smuggle 135 protected birds, which were transported by bus. And for the next time, checkpoint will be developed in other location. Border gate in Provinsi West Kalimantan Province and in Bitung Port in North Sulawesi Province. And number 6 is a trap removal operation. We also have the trap removal operation in 4 locations. In Gunung Leuser National Park, areas of protected forest, productive forest in East Aceh, in 30 Hill Ecosystem Riau, and Buganinani Wartabonen National Park. And the result in Gunung Leuser National Park, about 108 amount of trap. In Aceh, 63 trap. And in 30 Hill Ecosystem, 170, and in Boganinani National Park, more than 945 trap. And the last capacity building related to wildlife crimes. List of training and workshop during 2018 and 2020, environment and certification program for the judge by Indonesia Supreme Court, and training on identification of ETP fish species, special training for public prosecutor on illegal wildlife trade, and then intelligence training. The intelligence training by police. For the basic technology and advanced class, and digital forensic training, DNA forensic training, photographic forensic training, psychological forensic training, and GIS mapping training, wildlife crime cyber patrol training, and the last is animal handling for the evidence if we have found the in the operation of wildlife. And then impact of COVID-19 pandemic to the wildlife enforcement activities. The first is optimizing the frequency of forest patrol according to institution personnel capacity. And then illicit wildlife online trading significantly increased, and domestic illicit wildlife trading significantly increased. However, foreign illicit trading going down. And the last, online transaction shorten distribution chain of illegal wildlife. Challenge in the wildlife enforcement in Indonesia. Intelligence and detection of illegal wildlife trade, particularly online trade. Cooperation on disposal confiscated specimens, wildlife evidence handling in living specimens, limited civilian investigators in wildlife crime handling, human-wildlife conflicts, border security and supervision. Modus operandi in wildlife crime is getting more sophisticated, and multiple species identification, particularly when they are no longer intact or derivative form. More than 200 species of shark and ray in the fisheries. This is the future plan to handling illegal wildlife trade in Indonesia. Strengthening wildlife cyber patrol. Effective communication strategy and awareness raising or campaign, strengthening intelligence network in wildlife crime, expanding checkposts for wildlife trafficking and other strategic support on and state borders, developing illegal wildlife trafficking database and distribution map, developing wild animal protected database, mobile application for rapid assessment for identifying the species. Establishment, this is the new initiative also. We will establishment a canine unit which has been trained to smell wildlife to help officer in checkpoint. Canine is a dog who have ability to smell the wildlife. We will be trained to smell the wildlife. And the last, optimizing cooperation from partners and donors. Okay, that's all my presentation, Bu Mary. Sorry. I cannot, Bu Mary, I cannot follow this webinar until the end, and I apologize. I will leave this session because one of my colleagues has passed away before this session started, and I will go to funeral home after this presentation. And again, I apologize. I cannot attend this session until the end. And if the participant have any question or any clarification, please convey to the moderator, and moderator will forward to me, and I will reply by email. I'm sorry again, Bu Mary and ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Ardi. Understood that you have to leave now, and our deepest condolences to the passing away of your colleague. Terima kasih Pak untuk presentasinya. Saya ingin, sebelum Bapak pergi, I would like to mention some points that I think it's worthy to be mentioned again. That it's thank you for your presentation. It's clearly we get all the like the overall picture of what is your directorate's doing regarding tackling the wildlife, the illegal wildlife trading. And it's interesting to see that on your next on the future program, you will not only strengthen your offline operation, but you will also be strengthening your online operation. So I think this is with the use of technology, I think we can do better in this wildlife conservation and illegal wildlife trading. Thank you very much, Pak Ardi. I should contact you if there's any questions from the audience.
Okay,
Thank you,
I
Pak.
will leave this webinar. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak. Okay, so ladies and gentlemen, Bapak Ibu sekalian, we are going to have a session from our fourth speaker. Our next presenter is Bapak Julianus. He is a representative from the Masyarakat Adat Dayak Simpang. We are very grateful that we got the opportunity to have Pak Julianus with us today. I think his presentation will provide other perspective about wildlife conservation and also illegal wildlife trading. Pak Julianus, I think, okay, before that, I think we might, please anticipate there might be some technical problem because Pak Julianus, is doing this webinar from the remoteness of West Kalimantan. So the committee will helping him operating the PowerPoints, and also due to his English limitation, Pak Julianus will be doing the presentation in Indonesia, but his file, but you will see like his file is also written in English. If there's any, I think he will be assisted by his daughter Desi, and I will be assisting him if it's needed. Oke, selamat sore Pak Julianus. Boleh silakan dimulai presentasinya.
Baik, nama saya Julianus Yudit. Saya berasal dari Ketapang, Simpang Hulu, Ketapang, Kalimantan, Borneo, Indonesia. Saya berasal dari suku Dayak, yang dimana orang mengenal suku Dayak itu berladang dan berburu. Nah, jadi itu yang perlu saya perjelaskan di sini. Jadi saya suku Dayak yang berada di Borneo. Suku Dayak itu berada di Borneo, termasuk Malaysia. Tentang identitas Dayak, memang Dayak dari nenek moyang dulu hidupnya memang di hutan. Nah, hidup lahir di hutan, tinggal di hutan secara berpindah-pindah. Nah, jadi mengenal Dayak itu jarang menemukan Dayak, nenek moyang Dayak itu di pesisir atau di laut. Nah, hidupnya di hutan, maka dengan keadaan alam seperti itu, maka mereka harus berladang untuk menutupi dan memenuhi kebutuhan hidup mereka, berladang, mengambil rempah-rempahan, sayur-sayuran ataupun obat-obatan dari hutan, dan mereka berburu untuk kebutuhan hidup mereka.
Oke, lanjut ya Pak ya. Next slide.
Jadi orang Dayak tersebut, suku Dayak bisa bertahan hidup di hutan untuk mempertahankan hidupnya, itulah dengan cara berladang dan dengan cara menggunakan bahan-bahan yang di hutan seperti untuk buat rumah, pondok, buat tempat berteduh dari atap daun, bahan-bahan rumah dari kayu, terus daun-daunan untuk obatan tradisional, sayur-sayuran dari hutan, dan lauk pauk mereka hasil dari berburu. Ya, jadi itu zaman dahulu nenek moyang orang Dayak memang seperti itu. Berburu mereka dalam keadaan keseimbangan, bukan dalam hal berlebihan, bahkan ataupun mengeksploitasi hutan ataupun alam gitu. Jadi hanya untuk kebutuhan hidup. Next. Di samping mencari lahan di hutan, tumbuh-tumbuhan untuk makan, masyarakat Dayak juga melakukan perburuan satwa liar. Nah, ini adalah merupakan sebuah tradisi yang sudah dilakukan sejak nenek moyang zaman dulu. Next. Budaya Dayak mengajarkan orang Dayak untuk menjalani hidup harus seimbang, harus seimbang. Jadi jangan berat sebelah gitu. Jangan banyak kebutuhan, tapi sedikit tanggung jawab. Ibaratnya kebutuhan akan alam banyak, tapi tanggung jawab akan memelihara alam itu sedikit. Itu salah menurut ajaran nenek moyang orang Dayak. Karena nenek moyang orang Dayak itu memang hidup di hutan, maka hutan itu harus utuh, harus dijaga. Karena orang-orang Dayak itu tidak bisa kalau tidak hidup di hutan. Nah, jadi maka harus ada keseimbangan antara kebutuhan dengan tanggung jawab. Nah, ini termasuk menjaga hutan, alam, dan termasuk hewan-hewan yang ada di wilayah hutan tersebut, di wilayah lingkungannya tersebut. Bahkan sebelum berburu, orang Dayak tersebut mengadakan ritual, memohon kepada penjaga hutan, penjaga alam gitu. Setelah diadakan ritual, apabila dalam ritual tersebut mendapat sebuah firasat atau perasaan kode dari burung atau binatang lain, maka mereka bisa berburu. Tapi kalau ada petanda-petanda dari alam, mereka jangan memaksa, karena nanti akan terjadi sesuatu hal. Jadi setelah mereka tuh mengadakan sesajian, mereka memberi ibaratnya permohonan sedekah kepada alam, baru mereka melakukan perburuan. Next. Jadi ada beberapa tempat, maka disinilah dari berburu saja, mereka itu tidak selalu. Jadi berburu itu pakai kelompok. Setelah mendapat hewan tersebut, setelah hasil liburan mereka bagikan sedikit kepada alam, kepada alam, kepada hutan. Tanda syukur mereka bahwa mereka sudah mendapat rezeki gitu. Jadi hasil itu dibagikan pada kelompok-kelompok di dalam kampung tersebut. Kemudian mereka awetkan dengan cara diasap di atas api. Dari itu mereka fermentasikan supaya itu bisa bertahan sampai 3 bulan. Mereka tidak berburu. Jadi 7 kali berburu, misalkan ikan kita mancing atau jauran di tempat itu, atau kita berburu di hutan itu, di tempat itu, 7 kali berburu itu didirikan keramat. Ke-7 kali berburu itu didirikan keramat. Setelah didirikan keramat, dibuat perumahan keramat itu mengada sumpahnya, ada perjanjiannya, baik dengan yang nabi-nabi yang mempunyai tanah, mempunyai hutan, silapa, itu ada sesumpahnya, tidak boleh diganggu. Kalau diganggu itu bahkan sumpahnya ada yang sakit segala apa. Jadi ada pantangnya, ada ini aturannya, ada hukum adatnya. Jadi maka tidak boleh diburu atau diambil lagi di tempat yang sudah dibuat sebuah keramat. Keramat itu ada di hutan, ada di pokok durian atau buah-buahan. Keramat itu ada di sungai, ada batu, itu keramat. Itu cara mempertahankan. Bahkan sekarang banyak keramat-keramat itu yang udah luar biasa, banyak ikannya, karena tidak ada yang berani mengganggu gitu. Jadi next. Ini adalah contoh mereka berkeramat. Berkeramat ini di tempat ini dulu mereka udah pernah 7 kali mereka berburu. Jadi mereka buat sesajian, tetua-tetua kampung, orang-orang tua, bahwa di sini memang udah dilarang siapapun, baik orang luar maupun penduduk pribumi gitu. Jadi tidak boleh lagi mengganggu apapun yang ada di sini. Jadi itulah. Next. Jadi perburuan ini, maka muncullah beberapa kali itu loka karya adat baik di tingkat sampai tingkat provinsi, di lingkungan masyarakat adat Dayak itu, keluarlah aturan atau adat nuba. Kalau ketahuan orang itu nuba ikan atau meracun ikan, mereka kena adat, kena sanksi adat. Kena sanksi adat berat. Bahkan sampai menubah itu sampai menyangkut lewat dari tempat mandi orang, setelah adat itu mereka lanjutkan ke hukum positif. Bahkan ada orang muncul lagi adat dilarang hasil lokakarya itu dilarang membunuh kelempiau, dilarang bunuh orangutan. Maka sekarang di lingkungan Dayak juga udah dilepaskan kelempiau. Jadi udah ada berkeliaran di daerah-daerah rumah, tidak ada lagi orang mengganggu atau menembaknya atau membunuhnya. Karena itu memang udah diikat pakai aturan adat. Ada teluk-teluk, sungai-sungai itu yang siapapun tidak boleh dan tidak berani. Dengan rasa takut mereka, kesadaran rasa takut mereka tidak berani mengambil ikan besar atau ikan kecil di daerah teluk keramat tersebut. Itu merupakan salah satu cara adat dalam mengamankan gitu. Jadi orang-orang Dayak zaman dulu memang berburu begitu caranya dengan keadaan lingkungan alamnya. Jadi dengan keseimbangan. Jadi bahkan seharusnya kalau orang Dayak itu tidak melupakan sejarah mereka itu yang berasal dari alam dan tergantung kepada lingkungannya, sudah pastilah orang tersebut tidak akan mengeksploitasi hutan dan hewan. Harusnya mereka yang terlebih dahulu menjaga itu, menjagakan hutan dan hewan. Karena mereka itu memang dari awalnya sudah hidup di hutan dan bertergantungan dengan lingkungannya gitu. Jadi next. Ini alat-alat berburu orang Dayak zaman dulu, yaitu ada sumpit, ada pote. Sumpit itu pakai ditiup. Pote itu merupakan perangkap. Perangkap itu ada ukuran talinya supaya dia itu bisa ibarat meledak tuh. Jadi dibuat ukuran tinggi. Jadi kalau ibaratnya sasaran tuh yang mau kita buru itu harus di atas 40 kilo. Kalau yang sudah 40 kilo itu lewat dia tidak kena gitu. Jadi setelah itu ada lagi yang serampang itu untuk dapatkan ikan. Next. Itulah termasuk tombak. Bubu itu penangkap ikan. Bubu itu dipasang di sungai untuk menangkap ikan. Tombak itu beruncing untuk nikam waktu berburu. Next. Jadi itulah halnya orang Dayak tersebut berburu itu hanya secukupnya untuk memenuhi kebutuhan itu saja. Tidak pernah mengeksploitasi, bahkan sampai dibisniskan, tidak pernah itu. Sejarahnya tidak pernah. Seharusnya memang barang itu orang Dayak lah yang lebih dahulu itu sebagai pejuang di depan itu menghalang orang-orang yang merusak hutan dan menghabiskan binatang-binatang yang ada. Karena orang Dayak memang hidupnya dari awal dari hutan nenek moyangnya dulu. Next. Ini contohnya yang diawetkan. Ini salai. Yang satu itu pekasam difermentasikan. Ini sampai zaman dulu itu sampai 3 bulan. 4 bulan mereka itu tidak perlu lagi berburu. Karena masih ada persediaan. Begitu. Next. Beberapa macam binatang yang bisa menjadi patokan petanda-petanda alam, termasuk tuh kodok. Kodok itu bukan kodok yang biasa gitu. Jadi kalau kodok itu berbunyi, otomatis itu petanda akan hujan. Ada kangkangko. Kangkangko itu kalau dia berbunyi itu berarti pertanda tahun itu akan buah-buah itu lebat banyak. Itu binatang kangkangko. Ada itu jeriap. Burung jeriap itu burungnya kecil. Tapi kalau dia berbunyi terus-menerus, bahkan berbunyi tengah malam, berarti di kampung itu dah positif akan ada orang meninggal. Nah, pantis, burung pantis itu sedang juga agak kecil. Kalau burung pantis itu sudah berbunyi, petanda kita akan mendapat musibah atau kecelakaan. Nah, jadi kalau pempanyan itu bukan seperti burung, kayak seperti serangga. Kalau dia udah berbunyi itu pempanyan itu pertanda itu mau kemarau panjang, pempanyan itu udah berbunyi. Next. Perburuan orang Dayak dilakukan oleh orang perburuan ilegal dilakukan oleh orang di luar kelompok-kelompok yang kita ketahui. Next. Dah. Mungkin hanya itu. Terima kasih.
Oke, terima kasih Pak Julianus untuk presentasinya. Ladies and gentlemen, I would like to, because Pak Julianus give a presentation in Indonesia, and even though there's an English version of his PowerPoints, I would like to mention, I would like to take something from his presentation, which I think is very important. One point that Pak Julianus mentioned is us as a humans, because we have so much needs, because we're expecting so much from the nature. So in return, we should also taking care the nature in the best way that we can do. Pak Julian also mentioned that the wildlife is the messengers of the nature. So the Dayak people really depend on the signs brought by the animals from the forest. And it's also important, and I think it's important and it's interesting that the Dayak group they set limits on how many times an area can be used as a hunting ground. He mentioned about 7 times. So after 7 times hunting in certain area, that area would be stayed as a sacred area, and no one can do hunting anymore in that area. Thank you Pak Julianus. Kita akan tunggu nanti mungkin ada beberapa pertanyaan. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now we are going to have our last speaker. Last but of course not least, Pak Dwi. He was the chair session of our morning session this morning. Pak Dwi, without further ado, please. We're looking forward to hear your presentations. Pak Dwi Adiastono Nugroho, he is now from Wildlife Conservation Society Indonesia. Thank you, Pak.
Thank you, Mbak Mary. So, finally, I will try to give a presentation about modus operandi and also wildlife trafficking motive in Indonesia. So I will try to share my screen. So have you seen the screen, Mbak?
Ya, terlihat.
Okay. Thank you. So this is like motive and modus operandi that actually the most frequent things that we can Okay, so this is a thing that actually we can found during identifying the crime, both motive and also modus operandi. So for introduction, we understand that Indonesia actually one of the country where declared as 17 megabiodiversity countries, which is having more than 5,000 endemic species, and also more than 17,000 islands, and 1990 islands are permanently inhabited. And also Indonesia also have more than 500 conservation areas with more than 36 million hectares conservation areas, and also protecting up to 904 species of animals and plantations. And the role of wildlife for human life that we already know. So we already understand about the food chains, yeah. So wildlife actually maintaining the balance of ecosystem from ecological disasters. Also maintaining forest and ecosystem regeneration. Some of the birds actually they bring seeds and then spread it into the new areas, and then yeah, the plantation then exit there. And also we understand about national pride. So we having Sumatran tigers, yeah. So in the past we also have Javan tigers and also Bali tiger, but now already extinct. So we only have Sumatran tiger for now. And wildlife actually also have big roles and also purposes for science and technology, and also there are so many benefits, especially economic value for humans, yeah, that can be managed wisely. And if we think about the wildlife trafficking, illegal wildlife trafficking in Indonesia, it's like a super big problem, because you know that in the picture you can see that so many aspects that actually contribute to the wildlife trafficking. Yeah, so we talk about sentence disparity, as Mas Afrizal mentioned before in the previous presentations, and also we deal with the criminal network that need to be dismantled. Also, we deal with strengthening capacity for various law enforcement agencies. We deal with the natural regulation that need to be improved. Also, behavioral change. So if we talk about like bird keeping, then we need to make sure that the people in the future, they not try to keep the birds, but they just need to see the birds in the wild. Yeah? And also this thing that we need to discuss more about the various motive and also modus operandi operated by traffickers to do their illegal activities. And this is the example on how the most sophisticated networks related to wildlife trafficking in international level. So there's an example in here in Malaysia, where a big kingpin in Malaysia, they operate many traffickers, from poachers to the middlemen to the exporters, and then managed by him. So he supplied and provide financial backers. So this thing that technology actually can be used for law enforcement officers to identify the networks, and then they can target the suspect perfectly, yeah, to make sure that they identify and also target the traffickers in the right things, in the right way. And if you talk about Indonesia, so we can identify that at least 10 traffickers, they have roles in their networks. Yeah? So we can see here that the network actually consists of poachers, seller, dealer, intermediary, courier, financial backers, third party, if we deal about online modus operandi, and also corrupt officers that provide protections. Even in their network, they also provide like counterintelligence. So they delegate some people that have knowledge about intelligence activities to spy, to monitor law enforcement activities surrounding them. And the last chain of wildlife trafficking, actually buyers, consumer, or collectors. And we can actually in Indonesia and also in other areas in international level, we can identify that the trafficker actually consists of two different groups. Yeah, first we call it organized crime, and second one is organized criminal group. For organized crime, actually managed by specific ethnics or family, and they often use violence to secure their business. They have limited members because they came from family or ethnics, but they have a high loyalty, and their operation actually influenced by market demand. And this network actually selling legal and illegal products. So if you see this network, actually sometimes they trade protected animals, but sometimes they also trade like legal product like coffee, sugar, or other products. And for organized criminal group, actually we can find it in the field level, yeah. So a low level traffickers like poachers, local suppliers to the local dealers. So this organized criminal group actually can be identified by multiple groups. So they consist of multiple groups, ethnics or families, and they are also influenced by financial backers. So some financial backers actually they provide the money to the poachers, group of poachers to poach, for example, like tigers or elephant or rhinos, and then they will ask the money after the poachers succeed to poach the tigers and then sell the tiger skin to the buyers. And for organized criminal group, actually, they recruit members intensively to extend their network. They communicate each others, and they will communicate to others when, for example, their groups members arrested by the police, for example, then they will inform to other members or other groups to warn them that they need to be more careful. And this group also influenced by market needs or demand, and different to compare to organized crime. That organized criminal group actually they just selling illegal products. And this the overview of wildlife trafficking sting operation in Indonesia since 2003 when I'm start to work on wildlife trafficking to 2021 until September this year. So let me see the number of sting operations during the pandemic years since 2020 to 2021. So even there's a decrease, but not really significant. So it means that actually the number of cases, the number of findings about wildlife trafficking actually still high during pandemic era, yeah. Especially like Pak Ardi mentioned about online trafficking, very high. But law enforcement officers, they also increase their activities to arrest the traffickers. So that's why during pandemic, the number of sting operations still continues, still high, more than 200 sting operations on in this year, yeah, until September. And from that sting operation, actually the law enforcement officers, they succeed to arrest more than 300 traffickers from poachers to the financial backers level. And this is the motive of poaching and trafficking in Indonesia. So first is about fun, yeah, for hobby. So that's why we know about trophy hunting, someone keeping birds in their house, yeah. And the second modus is poaching for primary needs, yeah, for daily needs. We call it subsistence. So this is the thing that already mentioned by the presenters before. So not for business, but for subsistence, for purpose fulfill their daily needs. And if we travel to North Sulawesi, we also can see there's a bushmeat market, yeah, it market there, and then the buyers they are selling bushmeat, wild meats to the buyers because in North Sulawesi actually they how to say it's common to eat bushmeat. Excuse me. And for many people, poaching wildlife also provide them alternative daily income, yeah, or a livelihood alternative, and also commercial interest, yeah. So supply domestic and international market. This is the thing that linked to the organized crime or organized criminal groups, and also for legal business, because not all wildlife trade actually related to illegal things, but also legal trade. And we also found that wildlife trade also supplies medical purposes, yeah, both modern and traditional. So that's why we call it. We know about traditional Chinese medicine. We know about the modern medicine that came from animal body parts or products. And some species actually being exported to supply fashion factory for luxurious products like shark carapace, sea turtle carapace from housebill turtles. So France actually a country where the demand of sea turtle carapace very high, and one of the country that being asked is Indonesia. So that's why many years ago some arrest happens in Indonesia targeting sea turtle carapace products, yeah. And in Sumatra, Kalimantan, and also in Java, we also think that the motive for poaching and trafficking for wildlife actually because the local people, they consider wildlife as a pest. So this we call it impact of wildlife human conflicts. So for example, like the tigers kill livestock, or the elephant destroy the plantation, your crops, and then the people, villagers kill them. But unfortunately, some of them or poachers, they get the benefit from the poaching activities by selling tiger skin or ivory. And by keeping tiger taxidermies, for example, people will confident to say that, okay, this is my lifestyle, the high, how to say, this prestige for us, for me to have tiger taxidermies or tiger skin in my house. This thing that actually still can be found in Indonesia. And also part of the culture. So that's why some of the poaching activities happen, because some of the animals actually will be used for culture, for traditional or ceremony, something like that. So, but some of the species, for example, like sea turtles, actually already stopped to be used for ceremony in Bali. And in China, especially, some of the valuable animal parts are considered as their assets. For example, like ivory from elephants, and also helmet hornbill tusk. So the purpose is they try to buy this product and then they keep it, and then in the future, if they need money, and then they can sell it by a high price. This is the thing that they consider animal as a valuable asset for them. This is some images that explaining the thing that I already explained before. So this tiger trapped by snares and elephant killed by poisons in Sumatra, because the villagers, they consider those animals as a pest, killing livestock, destroy their crops, so they kill tigers and elephant. But then the poachers remove the elephant ivory and also skins, bones for market supply. And we found this image in East Nusa Tenggara, where how to say, traders, they try to sell manta rays meats. So they drive the manta rays meat and then they sell it to the buyers. So based on the Indonesia regulation, actually manta rays already protected by Indonesia regulation. But some of the people there, they during the migration migration time, they poach manta ray and then kill and sell meats to the buyers in the market. And this is the pangolins meats. So we found it in Medan, in North Sumatra, many years ago, when the authority, they arrest the smugglers with evidence of 3.2 tons of pangolins, more than 2,000 individuals of pangolins. And the market's not in Indonesia, but Indonesia, China and Vietnam. So almost all of the pangolin meats actually delivered to China and Vietnam for luxurious food. Or some of them actually, they believe that pangolin meats will increase their healthy. And now Indonesia also suffering for poaching of helmeted hornbills, because helmeted hornbill actually one of the birds, the hornbill, that only they have how to say, massive cast. So the Chinese, they can carve this cast and then sell it as a asset, to keep it and then sell it in a high price. And other motive is about fashion. So we recognize that some of species actually how to say, being poached, and then some factory, they use it for like luxurious shoes, and then luxurious bags, and also some for fashion. So this is the thing that we also found it in Indonesia and also other countries. And unfortunately, some of the species are actually protected by regulation. For example, like the image below, you can see the, how to say, merchandise from sea turtle, which is protected by Indonesia regulation. And this the motive, like I mentioned before about the traditional medicine. So we found in West Sumatra pills contents of pangolin, pangolin scales, and also rhino horns in Vietnam also be used for medical purposes. And this very famous in Indonesia, in Java especially, when the traffickers, they poach the animals and transport the animal for supplying bird markets. Yeah, this is for business only, not for other purposes. And this we found in Jakarta, where wealthy people, they try to keep protected tigers, these Sumatran tigers, for fun. So they try to keep animals because they have a lot of money, so they can buy a tiger, even tigers, and then keep it in their house. Or even something that quite weird, in Indonesia. So we found it in 2012, in 2012. 2015, in Maluku, in Ambon, when the traffickers, they try to smuggle 4 meters long whale sharks from Indonesia to China. For what? For aquarium display, illegally. As you know that whale shark actually protected by Indonesia regulation. So they try to smuggle these marine species, megafauna species, using container filled by sea waters, and then transported by Antonov big cargo carrier. So this is the modus operandi of wildlife trafficking. So we found that various motive of hiding. So the traffickers, they try to hide animals using various packages, bags, or any others. Baggage, to hide the animal from detection. This orangutan from North Sumatra. So the officers, they found it during their inspection to the online traffickers. And this is the modus operandi where the traffickers, they use a courier. So the courier role is try to transport the animals from one country to other countries. So there's no direct communication between buyers and sellers, but they use courier to serve as, intermediary to bring animal from source country to the market countries. And this already arrested by the aviation security in Jakarta International Seaport, because the baby of Javan gibbon actually calling during the early morning. So the officer, they then recognize that there's something wrong happens in this woman. And this woman actually, they keep the Javan gibbon in their leg, covered by gummies. And this is the modus where the traffickers, they try to modify the packaging. So the left side is many reptiles found by aviation security in Jakarta International Airport. When the trafficker try to smuggle this reptile from Jakarta to Japan. So the Japanese actually already arrested in this case. And the right side is how the traffickers, the smugglers in eastern part of Sulawesi and also Papua try to smuggle parrots and also lorries from Indonesia to Philippines using seaport connections. So they just keep the cockatoos and also lorries inside the paralon to make sure that there's no noisy voice came from the birds. And this also common modus operandi operated by the traffickers. They use fake documents. So in the document mentioned about the frozen fish, but when the officers investigate and search the containers, then they found pangolin meats inside the containers. They also found frozen fish, but most of the containers area actually filled by pangolin meats. And another common modus by trafficker is they try to change the shapes. Yeah, so right side is manta rays gill wreckers. So this is very useful for Chinese to to make traditional Chinese medicine. And the traffickers in East Java, they try to confusing the officers by cutting the manta gills in the how to say small shape, yeah, just to make sure that the officers are confused about the shape. But actually, it is came from manta rays gill wreckers, which is protected by Indonesia regulation. Another modus also can be found in Indonesia. Actually, the traffickers, they mix the protected animals product with other similar types. Yeah, so we found it in Bali when the sellers, ivory shops, yeah, they try to sell not only ivory came from walrus, which is difficult to inspect in Indonesia, combining or mix it with ivory from Sumatran elephants. So once the officers found this, they need to have a DNA test, yeah, laboratory, to make sure that this ivory, this statute actually came from Sumatran elephant or other animals. But if you see this statute, actually almost the same, yeah, almost the same between Sumatran elephant ivory or walrus ivories. And many modus operandi operated by the traffickers in Indonesia, they also use expedition services. So this is the case in West Sumatra, where the tiger traffickers, they try to smuggle tiger skull with the tiger canines, and they just mentioned to Tiki that this package actually contains makanan, food, yeah. But when the aviation security screening this package, and then they found something weird with his package, then they found that it's not about food, but tiger skull. And as Pak Ardi mentioned before, that modus operandi, the most popular modus operandi during pandemic years is online. Yeah. So the trafficker, they use various online platforms, social media, and also e-commerce to sell many species of protected animals. So we can see here, even tigers, clouded leopards, gibbons, and also many bird species protected can be sold by the traffickers using online platforms. And this also can be found here many years ago, and also not only in Sumatra but also other areas in Java, where the traffickers, they use military attributes. Yeah, so this was something interesting to know that, for example, in these images, so the trafficker, they put the rank of military officers, yeah, let's call Kusmanto, to make sure that the officers reluctant to check this packet, because the package, because the sender, they mention about their rank, yeah, so mid-level military rank. And also the trafficker, they also use this funny thing. The trafficker, they also use the package that, how to say, mention about Polri, yeah, like the image below. So anybody doesn't want to check this package because this mentioned about Polri, but actually this package actually contains 2 gibbons here. So this is the thing that the traffickers, they try to use anything to avoid detection. And also we found the case where the trafficker, they operate their crime, yeah, selling tiger taxidermies or leopard from the, how to say, restricted areas like military areas. So it's quite difficult for the officers, law enforcement officers, to arrest him. So that's why law enforcement officer then together with military police to arrest the corrupt officers. And, yeah, okay, thanks, Mbak. This also common modus, so counterfeit products. So the trader, they sell fake and also original product, wildlife product. And this also quite common in Indonesia. So the traffickers, they also linked to zoos. So the zoos, the corrupt, yeah, staff in zoos, they sold tigers were die in the zoos, or they sell bird carcass to the traffickers, and then traffickers they try to sell to the markets. And the traffickers also use the advantage of restricted areas like warehouse or apartment to operate their crime by selling or processing pangolins before exporting to other countries. And this modus operandi, stockpile laundering. So you know that many available stockpiles keep in the warehouse in Indonesia, and then some of the traffickers that they use the opportunity to sell the stockpiles to the market. So this found in Hong Kong customs. And the last, this modus operated by high-level traffickers, where they try to launder their money from illegal activities, from poaching and trading protected animals, by operating legal business from their illegal activities. So this is the thing that we need to involve PPATK, Anti-Money Laundering Regulation, and also Indonesia Financial Transactions Report Analysis Center to detect the anti-money laundering from traffickers. Okay, thank you. So thank you. I'm sorry if I explained too fast, and I think we can continue this discussion to the discussion session. Thank you, Mbak.
Thank you very much, Pak Dwi. Your presentation really showed the massive network of illegal wildlife trading. So we have some questions from the floor, but I think the panelists they took the initiative to reply it themselves. But I would like to because we are actually running out of time. But I think I would like to pick up. There's one question. It was asked once this morning, but then the person posed the question again. Okay. Apologize. Okay. Maybe I'm going to start with one question to Laurie. She actually had answered the question, but I think it's worth to be asked again. And let me try to find the questions. Oh my God, I'm so lost in this. Okay. I'm so lost in this chat box. So this is from the question from the YouTube link is for Laurie. Behavior change might be quite long effort to do. How the FFI Nicaragua manage it until the community committed on behavior changes, and how do FFI convince the community?
Absolutely. So it's a really, thank you for this question. It's a really good point that it's a very long time effort. And so as you've seen, it's been, I think this has started with research that was first conducted in, if I'm not mistaken, 2016, 17. And then the team is built on that to develop that project further. So it's already been quite a few years in the making. And now it's operating out of a 4-year grant, but I think it's very clear to us that it's very incremental, step-by-step work. And one way to kind of try and see the difference as it's happening is to break down the result a little bit. So it could be very often the measure for behavior change campaign is just how many people have seen the campaign, and that's a very good start. But then in follow-up surveys, I've said before that we're establishing a baseline and then hoping to do further surveys towards the end of this particular project, is to see, well, if people have seen it, have they seen it? Have they remembered the message? Did it resonate with them? Do they declare having still consumed eggs in the past, I don't know, year after having seen the message? And then have they spoken about these ideas with their families and friends? So you can see how it's being understood, integrated, and then kind of disseminated. And I gave some of the examples of how the team is trying to convince the community through proposing alternatives, through communicating working with trusted people in the community, such as chefs or sport commentators, to communicate about the turtle egg consumption. But yeah, the project is still ongoing, so and we're all aware that it's going to be still probably a few years to see large scale changes. So I hope that helps answer the question from the audience.
Yes, I think there's also one question about, has that been implemented by the FFI in Indonesia?
So demand reduction campaigns has not been implemented by the Indonesia team so far, because we're very much focusing on the sourcing and harvesting of wildlife and trafficking in Indonesia. I think the question was also about whether situational crime prevention and crime scripting were being used to look at these aspects. And the answer is that we've only recently been working on adapting these approaches to conservation, and the Indonesia program has existed for 20 years. So they were working before we were thinking about this. And we've not used it to kind of review our approaches and see what more we could do based on these new ideas yet. But the team does already use some of the techniques that are recommended by situational crime prevention. For example, they work with the government to strengthen formal law enforcement and increase the risks of being involved in poaching, for example. And they also work to reduce provocations to engage in poaching by participating in conflict mitigation with, as Pak Dwi was saying, with species that are considered pests by villagers like tigers or elephants, and are killed and enter the trade in that way as well.
Okay, thank you, Laurie. The next is, we have some questions to Pak Raja, but I'm going to pick like the easiest one. It's from Pak Sulistrianto to Pak Raja. And I think there's also something related to Pak Dwi's presentation that he shows some text from this trader and the buyers. For Pak Raja, how useful is the knowledge of algorithm about the written words from cell phone or media, as you have presented to the lowest officer in the field? You actually.
Thank you. I think I did answer that one, but then I'll just give me just 1 minute to explain probably. So I think, in my opinion, it's gonna be useful if we exactly knows what do we want, Bapak, from the officers who are working on the grassroots. So, or what do we want as officers here in Jakarta or anywhere else on earth. So if we know exactly what do we want with the text, for example, Pak, we want to extract any words. Well, we want to detect, so creating early warning system, for example, Pak, by detecting some words related to illegal wildlife trade, and then distribute it into to the officers who are working on the grassroots level, on the field level. Then I think it's going to be useful. So, and then it's going to be very easy to, not very, but it's going to be relatively easy to do this part. So I think it really depends on how do we want to deal with the data or information or knowledge, and how then it's going to be useful. So the power of the algorithm itself lies on its ability to do the work fastly, as we want it. But again, it depends on us how we program the algorithm, and also the power of the, I would say, technology in this case, like the handheld, like the gadgets, for example, are laying into its ability to involve as many people as possible, like crowdsource, for example. So again, it depends on how we want to do it. I hope it answers. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Pak Raja. So it's most important that you really know what you want to achieve by using the algorithm, and you can create the algorithm. Okay, we have one questions for Mas Dwi from Irfan Prasetyo. How to deal with local people who fulfill their financial needs by hunting certain animal. What do you think is the best approach?
Yeah, thank you, Mas Irfan and also Mbak Mary. So the first thing that we need to identify is understanding the motive of the traffickers. I call it traffickers because something illegal there. Yeah. So for subsistence poaching, like many areas where the traditional people, the local people, they really depends on the wildlife, yeah, for their daily needs. And there's no business involved in that activities. Actually, the government still allow them to poach the animals, yeah, for their daily needs or their purpose. But once they try to sell the animals, especially protected animals or non-protected animal without any proper permits, then that's the crime, yeah. So that's why we always recommend to the authority to understand the motive of the traffickers, yeah. The way to identify and to set up the right interventions to them, yeah, whether they need to be arrested or whether they need to be socialized or whether they need to be, how to say, try to get another alternative, livelihood alternative, to make sure that they will reduce their poaching activities or they will stop their poaching activities and they can earn their benefits from other legal activities, yeah, rather than try to poach animal in illegal ways, yeah. Thanks, Mbak.
Okay, thank you, Mas Dwi, for your answer. So I would like to have one question actually to Pak Julianus. Pak Julianus, and I'm gonna ask this in English first, and then I'm gonna translate in Indonesian. So my question is, because it's obvious now that we understand there are different motives and purpose in this wildlife trading. So maybe Pak Julianus, and we see that there's a different scale of wildlife trading. There's like a massive one, and also there's a small ones, conducted by the local people. So Pak Julianus, maybe you have some experience or you see something on the field that, do you see that modern traders come to the forest and approach these local people, to sell the wildlife to them. Jadi Pak Julianus, pertanyaan saya itu adalah, apakah selama ini Bapak pernah melihat atau mendengar bahwa ada pedagang-pedagang wildlife ini, Pak, yang berusaha mendatangi masyarakat lokal supaya mereka mengambil hewan-hewan liar itu di hutan untuk dijual ke mereka, Pak. Silakan.
Ada. Nah, itu khususnya babi hutan. Ya, dengan ular, doa itu juga.
Jadi rata-rata itu babi hutan dan ular ya, Pak, ya?
Iya.
Okay. So mostly the traders come to them asking for the hawk and also snakes. Okay. I think that's all we have for this talk session. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, Bapak and Ibu. Hopefully, I know we are past 10 minutes from our original schedule, but I think that's acceptable, since I guess this probably the first conversation we have in Indonesia regarding illegal wildlife trading. So again, thank you very much for your participation, and we look forward for your participation next, because we're hoping this discussion will be a continuous. This is not one time wonder, but this will be a continuous forum for the coming years. Thank you, and I would like to return the forum to Sabila.
Okay, thank you very much, Mrs. Mary. Wow, what a very informative session. The speakers really are experts. Thank you to our moderator, Mrs. Mary, and 5 of our inspirational speakers for this wonderful session. We would also like to thank our participants for joining the session and all the interesting questions. Next week, we will talk about human and wildlife conflict, including technological challenges in wildlife conflict mitigation and resolutions, and also practical solutions for wildlife release. So be sure to join us next week. On behalf of our committee, we hope you stay healthy. Good afternoon, and we hope the rest of your day goes well.
Indonesia is one of the largest archipelagic countries in the world, with more than 17,000 islands that spread over an area of more than 2 million kilometer squares. Indonesia is host to several unique ecosystems, containing a large number of diverse species. At least 10% of the world's flowering species, which counts to over 25,000 species, flourish in Indonesia. There are also 12% of the world's mammals, 16% of reptiles, 17% of birds, 6% of amphibians, and over 45% of fishes, all of which are parts of the nation's lush biodiversity. In order to preserve its biodiversity, which also contributes hugely to the world, Indonesia has taken significant steps in accordance to the national and global target on biodiversity framework. The government has allocated more than 500 units of protected areas spread throughout the country, with the total coverage area of 22 million hectares terrestrial and 20 million marine protected area. Because of its uniqueness and universal values, 6 protected areas are recognized as World Heritage Sites, 16 biosphere reserves, 7 Ramsar sites, and 7 ASEAN Heritage Sites. Many studies and researches has also been conducted to identify plants and animals to assess their potential uses for medicine, food, energy, and biocontrol for chemical hazard. Some community-driven activities such as ecotourism has also contributed to the effort to preserve Indonesia's biodiversity, which also encouraged cooperation among local stakeholders. The results are heartening. By 2019, Indonesia has been able to increase the population of endemic and priority species. Communities have also enjoyed benefits from this improved environment through ecotourism, environmental services, and other significant conditions, which contribute to their quality of life as a whole. There is little doubt that Indonesia's vast biodiversity plays a hugely significant role in reducing the impacts of climate change. By preserving its biodiversity and its ecosystems, Indonesia can help support the entire planet's sustainability and ensure a better future for all humankind.
Sejarah Fakultas Kehutanan. UGM resmi didirikan pada tanggal 19 Desember 1949 dan merupakan universitas yang bersifat nasional. Selain itu, UGM juga berperan sebagai pengemban Pancasila dan sebagai universitas pembina di Indonesia. Pada saat didirikan, UGM hanya memiliki 6 fakultas dan salah satu di antaranya adalah Fakultas Pertanian. Dalam perkembangan selanjutnya, melalui Surat Keputusan Menteri Perguruan Tinggi dan Ilmu Pengetahuan Nomor 99 Tahun 1963, Fakultas Pertanian dan Kehutanan UGM terpisah menjadi 3 fakultas, yaitu Fakultas Pertanian, Fakultas Teknologi Pertanian, dan Fakultas Kehutanan. Dengan demikian, Fakultas Kehutanan UGM secara resmi dinyatakan berdiri pada tanggal 17 Agustus 1963. Dekan pertama Fakultas Kehutanan UGM adalah Profesor Insinyur Sudarwono Hadjosudiro Berdasarkan SK Direktur Jenderal Pendidikan Tinggi, SK Dirjen Dikti nomor 163 tahun 2007 tentang pengaturan program studi dan surat keputusan Rektor nomor 89 tahun 2010 tanggal 1 Februari 2010 mensahkan perubahan keempat program studi di Fakultas Kehutanan menjadi satu dengan nama program Studi Kehutanan. Program Studi Kehutanan terdiri dari 4 bagian, yaitu 1. Departemen Manajemen Hutan, 2. Departemen Silvikultur, 3. Departemen Teknologi Hasil Hutan, dan 4. Departemen Konservasi Sumber Daya Hutan. Di Fakultas Kehutanan terdapat Dewan Perwakilan Mahasiswa atau DPM yang berperan sebagai badan legislatif mahasiswa dan lembaga eksekutif mahasiswa atau LEM. Kemudian terdapat 4 himpunan mahasiswa minat. Di antaranya yaitu Keluarga Mahasiswa Manajemen Hutan atau KMMH, Himpunan Mahasiswa Budidaya atau HIMABA, Family of Forest Product Technology atau Foresttech, dan Family of Forest Conservation atau Forestation. Di samping itu, terdapat Badan Semi Otonom atau BSO yang meliputi organisasi pencinta alam atau Mapala Silvagama, Komunitas Seni Kehutanan atau KSK, Keluarga Mahasiswa Islam Kehutanan atau KMIK, dan Forestry Study Club atau FSC. Sedangkan International Forestry Student Association atau IFSA dan Keluarga Mahasiswa Kristen Kehutanan atau BONITA termasuk ke dalam non-BSO.
FFI bekerja di Indonesia sejak tahun 1996. Itu awalnya bersama dengan LIPI untuk melakukan penelitian-penelitian, terutama penelitian terkait dengan harimau Sumatera. Kemudian berkembang, kemudian kita ada kerjasama dengan Kementerian Lingkungan Hidup dan Kehutanan, waktu itu Kementerian Kehutanan, terkait dengan pengelolaan spesies-spesies yang dilindungi. Tantangan terbesarnya adalah kata kuncinya sebenarnya kepedulian. Ya, kata kuncinya adalah kepedulian. Kalau semua sudah peduli, maka secara umum sebenarnya pekerjaannya sudah done. Tapi masalahnya itu, bagaimana kita mendorong semua pihak untuk peduli menyelamatkan planet kita ini bersama-sama. Itu tantangan yang paling besar. Kearifan lokal masyarakat juga sangat penting di sana. Jadi di lain pihak kita melihat ada ancaman, tapi di lain pihak juga kita melihat ada kearifan masyarakat untuk menjaga hutannya. Nah, itu yang kita coba untuk dorong untuk dikembangkan di sana. Planet kita ini yang sustaining the planet, itu jangka panjang paling panjang kita. Jadi itu tujuan jangka panjang keberadaan FFI. Bukan hanya di Indonesia, tapi di dunia.